I wouldn't. They kept me standing for 5 days, day and night. My legs were so swollen.
At the height of the purges, ordinary people had to take part in mass demonstrations against so-called enemies of the people. Yet some who had been most devoted to what was going on, the young electrical engineer, couldn't believe what her husband, a party official, told her.
He understood. He knew what I didn't know. When he said, "You can't imagine it, Stalin is shooting all the present members of the Politburo," and he counted them off one by one. I couldn't bear it. We were having lunch. I picked up a knife and threw it at him. Thank goodness I missed him, but that was what was happening at the time. Stalin was shooting them all.
She broke with her first husband over this incident. Later he was purged and killed. She soon married another man, one who shared her unquestioning adoration for Stalin, but he too was purged. Then, as the wife of an enemy of the people, Ella Shistya was herself arrested and sentenced to prison in Siberia. She was sent with a party of other women crammed into boxcars. With nothing but salted fish to eat, she developed a desperate thirst.
I remember when there was a hard frost. Inside the wooden cattle truck, I used to lick the ice off the metal screws and bolts, fearing only that my tongue would stick. That's how we traveled, for about a month.
Their husbands had been killed before they left Moscow, but the women were convinced they were in the boxcar just behind them. As the train went east, they sang a song, hoping their men would hear.
Это мы, ваши жены, подруги, это мы нашу песню поем. Из Москвы по сибирской дороге вместе с вами этапом идем. Прочитали в бутырках нам приговор, дали каждой жене 8 лет и, вручивши конвою пакеты, повезли нас по 100 человек. Было тяжко в холодной теплушке, ели только мы рыбный кондер. У конвоя выпрашивали свечку, не теряя былой свой задор.
Prisoners became an essential part of the workforce. Slave labor for the new mines and railways.
First I worked on the BAM railway, then in Kolyma. The important thing was not to die of hunger.
Баланду тебе давали, баланда это суп без всякой, там
They gave you balanda, a soup with just a few fish bones and some oats floating around. We drank from metal bowls. They gave us a ladle of balanda and a lump of bread.
Вот так вот выпивали его и пайку хлеба. Еле-еле нас заставлял холод работать еще, потому что
we could hardly work for the cold. If we didn't move or work, we would have frozen.
И когда человек хочет, оправиться в забое,
When someone wanted to relieve themselves, they had to take their mittens off. By the time they undid their trousers, their hands were frozen. As soon as they pulled it out, it froze. Many people had their parts amputated. There were no injections or anything to reduce pain. They didn't even have proper scalpels. When I was in the camp, they asked me to hold out my frostbitten foot, and with pliers, they just took chunks out. That was the treatment, the operation. It was considered that if you survived the first winter, you'd get through your sentence. Most people didn't survive.
Большинство не выдерживало.
Stalin's henchmen tried to justify what was happening.
Мы можем прямо сказать, что НКВД своей разобщительной работой, раскрытием шпионских организаций не только спас много жизней, которым угрожала опасность от врагов, шпионов, диверсантов, разведчиков.
Applauding the message was the loyal construction worker, Tatyana Fyodorova.
А то, что какие-то вот такие политические интриги, игры, которые были, если будут, к сожалению.
The fact is that unfortunately you always have political intrigues, machinations of this kind.
Не заслонило движение вперед никак.
It was a very hard time, but it didn't derail the movement forward in any way, because the country was growing at great speed. We're talking about a country of many millions. The whole population worked, sang songs. It doesn't mean that everything was extinguished, everything was lost.
Нет. Нет.
The state film studios tried to beguile Soviet audiences into thinking these were normal times, producing escapist musicals in the style of Hollywood. On the surface, for those it had not devoured, the great communist experiment could claim to have achieved many of its goals by the end of the 1930s. The vast majority were able to read. Great construction projects like the Moscow subway had been completed. And many Soviet citizens had opportunities for work they'd never had before. After working as a village teacher in her youth, Anastasia Denisova had moved to the city.
The revolution opened my eyes to the world. It gave me everything. I was wearing birch bark sandals when I came to Moscow to study. I didn't reach any great heights after studying, but my eyes were opened.
In 1917, the communists had been a small minority. They'd imposed their ideas on their fellow countrymen, hoping to persuade them with the results. But 20 years later, even the early believers knew the promise that the oppressed masses will themselves form the government had not been delivered.
Мы поняли, что это самый главный враг социализма.
He was the greatest enemy of socialism.